Good evening and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Education is the process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, and habits. The process includes storytelling, discussions, teaching, training, and directed research. Here in the Bahamas, we have been experiencing very low returns on this process. For years, we have looked at the results of our education system's major exams and see that we are stuck somewhere around a D average. Are we failing our children in the classroom, or does the problem stem elsewhere? We have a new education minister who is an actual educator. He says he is committed to turning things around. Mammoth task, but we will have to wait and see as the school year has just begun. Education, New Beginnings is our topic tonight, and we plan on exploring our education system and its readiness for this new year, among other things. Our guests tonight are the Director of Education, Lionel Sands, Belinda Wilson, who's the President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, and our very special guest, Journey Minus, a 12th grade student of St. John's School. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
What do you believe?
Do you believe in energy? Do you believe in dreams?
Do you believe in passion?
Do you believe in family?
Do you believe in caring?
Do you believe in freedom?
Do you believe in imagination?
Do you believe in love?
Do you believe in community?
Do you believe in discovering?
Do you believe in music?
Do you believe in yourself?
Do you believe in living?
Believe in best.
Alive. Believe in best.
What are you doing?
Calling the bank to order more checks.
Go to epbahamas.com and order your checks from Executive Printers.
Executive Printers. We're the authority in business and personal check printing in the Bahamas. Come in and see one of our specialists or visit us online at epbahamas.com to design and order your checks today.
Yep. I got you. I really appreciate you helping us out. No problem, buddy. Yeah, but thanks for helping us move. What happened, babe? What you mean?
Our news weekend has moved to 7:30.
Welcome back to On the Record. The Bahamas Ministry of Education is responsible for more than 50,000 students in approximately 170 education institutions in the Bahamas. These students are placed in 14 districts on major islands. Our topic tonight is Education New Beginnings, and our guests are the Director of Education, Lionel Sands, who entered the system in 1971 as an educator and has had an illustrious career as a Family Island principal. Mr. Sands has held the position of director since 2007. Belinda Wilson is also an educator who has been the president of the Bahamas Union of Teachers for some time now, championing the cause of teachers in the Bahamas. And of course, we said our very special student guest is Dernick Minus, a 12th grade student at St. John's College. Welcome to all of you. Glad to have you on the record tonight.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're happy to have you all on board. We were planning to do this show some time ago, but due to the hurricane and some other eventualities, we had to push it down. But you know, education is a topic that is always relevant, no matter what time of the year it is, and no matter when we get together to discuss it. We also tonight decided to do something a little different. We brought Dernick Minus, a 12th grade student who has some questions of her own. I was making the joke, it's been a little while since I was in school. So we wanted to get a student's perspective in on the discussion tonight. But let's, start out with the $1 million question. I don't know if we can call it the elephant in the room. But were 100% of the schools ready in time for the start of the school year? And really, what precipitated that this time around? What things were different in terms of the readiness of the schools?
Well, we did not have 100% of the school ready at the beginning of the school year for a number of reasons. Certainly, the recent hurricane was the cause of much of what we have experienced over the past several weeks, where damages were done on several of our islands, particularly the southeastern islands. Even prior to that, though, we were not completely ready because there were some repairs that were to be completed by the end of the summer break that were not completed. And so that kind of caused us not to be in a state of readiness that we ought to have been. And so, however, it did not impact it negatively on the opening of school for the majority of the schools that we have, the majority of the 172 schools that we have in the country.
Mm-hmm. The opening of school, like so many other dates, is set on the calendar, give or take a day or two, every year. But it seems every year we seem to have the same conversation about the readiness of schools. And every year I always ask myself, why is it that we are not ready? Knowing when school closes, that you have this window of opportunity or window of time to complete the repairs and the necessary work.
Well, one of the things that you need to be aware of in education, and this is not to cast blame on any organization, the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education does not have full control over a number of things that happen in the various plants in the country. Plants meaning schools or buildings. There is Ministry of Works that also has the responsibility of overseeing the repairs and issuing out the contracts for the various contractors to do the repairs. And so that's another ministry that the Education Ministry doesn't have any control over. So that's one of the things that we need to take into consideration when we look at the repairs that need to be done. We could identify in education some of the things that are required to be done, but Ministry of Works actually ultimately oversees those things, and in terms of approving contracts, they are responsible for that. And so that's just a small part of it. Secondly, as all of us are aware, most of the plants in the Bahamas are very old plants.
By plants, you mean schools?
Schools.
Okay.
Old buildings, more than 40 years old, some of them 50, 60 years old. And so they would require maintenance every single year because of the nature of the deterioration in some of these plants. And many of those, 2 months is insufficient to get the kind of repairs that you need. In fact, we need new schools. That's the bottom line. We need new schools. But obviously, the government and governments in the past, they're hard-pressed to provide new schools because of the financing, the economic considerations. And so we will be stuck with this until we have new plants. That's the bottom line.
Belinda Wilson, how do you see this? I mean, every year it is always a roller coaster ride for the BUT and for its members, because sometimes I think right to the last minute you're not quite sure what's going to happen at some of the schools.
It's annoying and it's frustrating, and I note what Director of Education would have said about the Ministry of Works being responsible for maintaining the schools or conducting the repairs. However, the union, and I've been a full officer of the union from 2005, so we're talking about 12 years. We would have given our recommendations to the Director of Education, the 2-3 ministers, the different governments, that the Ministry of Education should have its own maintenance department. We also recommended that, for example, in New Providence has 4 districts: northeastern, northwestern, southeastern, southwestern. So we're saying then each district then, which is headed by a district superintendent, should have its own, the plumber, the electrician, which means that the maintenance of the schools will happen, it will be ongoing throughout the year. So if there's a door that has fallen off the hinges, then you don't wait. It fell off the hinge December last year, so you're waiting until July to repair it. The plumbing. And so if the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education, the personnel, would look at the union as partners and not just say that we are partners, and would at least recognize that our recommendations sometimes make a lot of sense, and it would save a lot of grief around the opening of school when everybody's running around to say that this isn't fixed, that isn't fixed, or the plumbing. So planning has a lot to do with it. Because, for example, you would know that Stephen Dillard would have had a $4 million makeover. However, teachers were not informed until June the 30th, when school would have closed, that they are having this major repair so that they will be able to secure their material and equipment. So planning, and there has to be the view that the Ministry of Works, in its present state, has to interact and communicate with education until education is able to get its own maintenance team.
Mr. Sands, is it that easy? Knowing what I know of government and how it works and how these things, is it that simple to say that the Ministry of Education should have its own maintenance department, and that can happen with the signing of an order or the creation of a department?
No, it is not not easy, simply because Ministry of Works has the remit for maintenance of all government buildings. And in order for that to change, that has to be changed, I imagine, from through Parliament, not necessarily a minister saying to another minister, we will take over this aspect of the remit that you've had in the past. And so that has to be a governmental change. And I understand the President when she speaks to the fact that education should have its own maintenance team, and that's fine. And we would love to have that. But that is not the remit for education at this particular point in time. And so that has to be changed from a government level and not necessarily from ministry level.
Well, I want to rebut what he said, because, like I said to you, I would have served for 12 consecutive years. And there was a time, I think it would have been around 2006, 2007, when there was a maintenance team at the Ministry of Education, headed by persons from the Ministry of Works.
So you're saying that this could happen?
It can
happen. Well, all right. Well, let's move a little. Jurnik, I'm going to bring you in on this discussion. You've sort of heard what is from a public school perspective, getting schools ready. You come from a different background. You're from a private school, a private institution. In coming back to school, are you always satisfied that your school and even other schools are ready for the start of the school year?
Well, with our school, I remember this school year, during the summer holiday, our school made a lot of preparations in attempting to provide shelters for the students to walk through in the rain, and ensuring that all the classrooms had proper windows and that all the desks and chairs were there in each classroom for each student. So I believe that I agree with Ms. Wilson that preparation is necessary in order to ensure that the schools are ready.
Let me ask you this. And this is something that, I think we have encountered for a long time. You go to a private school, you come back to an institution that's prepared. You have enough desks, the windows are prepared, etc. Do you think that improves your ability to learn in the class? Does it make it more comfortable? And when you look at your counterparts in the public school, do you think that they're getting the same kind of facilities and the same environments that you are?
I don't believe that they are getting the same facilities or the same environment, because if the environment isn't conducive to learning, whereas the students feel comfortable and they are ready and be able to listen to, if the environment is comfortable for them, then they will be more ready and able to learn and pay attention to the teachers. But I believe that in the public school systems, because the environment isn't so conducive to learning, they are at a disadvantage in some areas. I'm
going to put that out there. You would have heard, firsthand from a private school student that there is that concern. Do you all share that view?
I don't share that view. And the reason why I don't share that view is because, yes, we do have 172 schools throughout the country. And it's difficult to have absolute equity throughout, simply because of the financial strain that is on the government to provide the kind of equity that ought to be. For example, the student in Mirgwana should have the same facility, the same teaching, same level of teaching personnel as the student at C.V. Bethel High School. And so that makes it kind of difficult for the government to provide that kind of equity, simply because, for example, at St. John's College, where she attends, it's easier for the persons who run St. John's to provide the necessary teaching personnel for St. John's in New Providence, whilst it is much more difficult for us to provide similar, levels of teaching in a very remote island that has very little attraction to many teachers who would determine that, I don't want to go down that far away.
I don't leave my family and be stationed in a Meguana or in an Auckland.
And so the challenge we're faced with is, how do we encourage teachers to leave the comforts of home, wherever that is, and go to the discomforts of a family island such as that? And so, but when you look at what is in these schools, and the president could speak to that, the environments in most of our schools, with respect to the teachers, the administrators, and the personnel that work around the school, they're excellent environment in public schools. And I could compare them with any private school in this country. And so I don't agree that, yes, we do have much more to take a look at and try to rectify within the summer months. But the environment is no less than what you find in the private school.
Well, and I know you want to get in. We're going to speak to both of those, but we do need to take a break, our first break in the show. So hold your points. We will be back on the record right after this.
On the Record is sponsored by BAF Financial. BAF for life.
I'm free to live my life, yeah. Free to be me, yeah. The way I want to be. Doing the things that I want to do. Yes, I'm living my life. Hey! BAF for life. Yes, I'm living my life. Hey! BAF for life. For life.
Get in the game with NFL Sunday Ticket from Rev TV. You'll get every game every Sunday afternoon in crystal clear HD. That's over 220 football games for the entire regular season. Plus, NFL Sunday Ticket gives you that died and woke up in football heaven experience when you include NFL Red Zone, a channel dedicated to every scoring play from every game and all your fantasy football teams. Get in the game with NFL Sunday Ticket. Call 601-8992 today.
We making dreams come prices in the market, you getting cash in your pocket. 'Cause Island Games is spicy, and spicy is tradition. So when you play, we putting Bahamians first, guaranteed to pay. We like them other jokers, we've been here from the start, from the bike to computer. Island Games, we can make your dreams come true. We playing with Island Games.
Welcome back to On the Record. Tonight we are discussing Education New Beginnings. Our guests, Lionel Sands, Belinda Wilson, Duranique Minus. As we went into the break, we were discussing this, whether it's actual or perceived view that there may be some disparity between public and private school students, specifically to the environment. And also in terms of providing, I guess, universal education and the universal level of education across all schools in the Bahamas and the challenges that that creates. Belinda, I know you wanted to get in on that.
Okay, I want to agree with Duranique when she spoke about the disadvantage of schools not being prepared when the students arrive. I'm aware that we have 172 schools on 24 islands and keys and 57,000 students, and we have to take whomever. I'm aware of that. However, in education, I believe we need to stop making excuses as to what it is we cannot do. We already know what we have to prepare or offer for our students. So I expect that every public school student should have a desk and a chair. And we do have students today as we speak who are going into other classrooms to get a chair to sit in. They're sitting at the teacher's desk. That's unacceptable. The other thing, the theme of your show this evening is Education New Beginnings. So when you talk about new, you talk about modern, you talk about cutting edge, you're talking about contemporary. And so the Ministry or the Department of Education has to get in the 21st century. And getting in the 21st century does not mean that you physically have a teacher in every school throughout the Commonwealth, because we know that there is a teacher shortage, and we know that according to the MDG goals, there was supposed to be 30 million teachers within a 15-year period. They've not met that goal. Fine. But we have something called technology. We have a section in the Ministry of Education called the Bahamas Learning Channel. They produce videos, they produce CDs. We should be able to use that technology. We're sitting here, we should be able to have students watch us via the internet. You have WhatsApp, you have Snapchat, you have Instagram, you have Facebook. So the Ministry of Education isn't only the Ministry of Education, it says science and technology. So we should expand on that aspect of the ministry and the department and ensure that we use the resources that we have that's available to us.
I'm going to ask Mr. Sands to respond to that, but before we get to that, Belinda, to what extent should teachers be charged with bringing that technology themselves to the classroom? Should it be that you wait solely on the ministry, but if you are a teacher and these tools are available to you, what is to stop a teacher from bringing that technology to the class? If there is a YouTube video, if there is something that can assist in aiding children and helping to drive the entire system into the 21st century, what's stopping a teacher from making that happen?
Okay, a teacher is not being stopped because the majority of technology that is in schools are personal to the teachers. So the Ministry of Education is found wanting in that area. However, their ACR, they're graded on use of technology. Well, you gave me one marker and you gave me one eraser and 2 chart papers, but you're asking me about technology, or you're grading me on technology. So teachers bring technology into the school, their own laptops, their own printers, their own LCD projectors, which they purchase from their meager resources. So yes, the teacher has a responsibility, but the onus is on your employer to provide the equipment and the material that you need in order for you to do your job in an efficient and effective manner.
Mr. Sands, is this just a financial barrier? Are we looking and saying we just cannot afford to do these things?
Well, yes, that's a part of it, but we have, and our experience has been over the past several years, where we, and I'm sure the president is talking about particularly those schools that are far away from New Providence, where there's a challenge in getting the even the technology, simply because we're looking at now bandwidth to be able to allow the technology to be accessed by schools in the far southeastern islands. And this is very expensive. And so the ministry has been, over the last 2 years, working with BTC, working with those who are able to provide us with that kind of technology assistance. And of course, we understand that technology is very important, and that is our thrust. Our thrust is to get more technology in the schools. But there is a financial constraint that the Ministry of Education has, that the government has. And so in fact, when I take a look at the budget of the Department of Education, the budget of the Department of Education is like $196 million. Out of that, $168 million is just to pay salaries. And so what's left is for all of the things that the president is talking about, in addition to tuition, material supplies, and computerization and all of that. And so you're talking about just under $30 million to do all of the other things that's just as important as paying the teacher's salary and helping, in fact, to support what the teachers are doing. And I'm not saying that $168 million is sufficient enough to pay the teachers. Obviously, we could be paying them more. But the point is, we are constrained, and within our constraints, we must work. And yes, we desire to be given much more in terms of financial commitment by the government to be able to do all of the things that the president is talking about, and to be able to do the things that we know would make the system of education works. What we're doing now, though, is we're taking a look at what have we been doing in the last 40 years that needs to be changed, that the president talks about.
That should be a very long list, sir.
Very
because
long.
my own experience,
that's my
within
point.
the school
And so
system, it is very outdated and antiquated in many ways.
And so we're taking a look at that, and we'll discuss that as we.
One of the things that's curious to me is, and this is from my personal experience, about 4 or 5 years ago, during my time at BTC, I actually led a group looking at how we would bring free internet Wi-Fi to schools. And I remember my own experience. I sat on that with that group for 1 year just about, and was not able to make any significant progress. And that was over, I guess, about 5 years ago.
And we still have not gotten to that.
So brings me to my next point. Are there people within the ministry or within this whole makeup who are technologically savvy enough and have the willpower to move this ahead? Because I'll give you a specific experience. People on that group said, "Oh, I don't check email regularly." And I thought, how could you know? You're in an IT discussion and you don't discuss. I mean, I walk around with my email tied to my phone. This was 5 years ago, so obviously things have changed. But my question is, do you have the capacity in the ministry? And when I say capacity, I mean mental capacity, people who are at that level, who understand what needs to be done and can be able to relate to these kids and know what their needs are.
In the Ministry of Education, we had, time you were talking about, a section within the ministry that dealt with that. That entire section was taken out and placed in the Ministry of Finance. So the MIS section by itself that dealt with the issue that you talk about is now in the Ministry of Finance. And so we have no control over that. And so as it relates to whether we have persons who are capable of handling the technology within the Ministry of Education, yes, we do. But the remit for technology is not within the Ministry of Education.
Back to this situation of remit again. We started with the Ministry of Works having remit over the repairs, and now finance have remit over
Understand what I'm saying, though. Understand what I'm saying.
Yes,
yeah, they're teachers and they're school administrators and their school education personnel who have the capacity for these things. However, I'll give you a classic example, and this is one the president understands clearly, if I wish to engage a teacher, a computer teacher, technology teacher, my responsibility is to identify a teacher who's qualified to meet the demands of the requirements that I'm seeking. However, in order for me to engage that teacher, I have to now engage the Ministry of the Public Service to determine whether there is approval for that particular person. I have also to engage the Ministry of Finance for the approval of engaging that person.
That's really two other institutions.
That's my point.
Two other ministries.
But
okay.
in addition to that,
the problem now begins to come clear.
Listen,
Go ahead.
I am tired of the excuses.
But there's no excuse
I
here.
am tired of the excuses. Let me tell you something, Mr. Sawyer, and I will look in Mr. Lionel Sands' eye and tell him. There have been millions of dollars spent on technology in the ministry and the Department of Education. I've asked the minister to look at the Tune Into Reading program, and there were some other persons who would have donated technology.
By minister, you mean the current minister?
The current minister.
Okay.
I'm asking him, and I've asked him for an investigation into everything dealing with technology in the ministry. There are persons in the Ministry of Education, I can call some of their names, but I won't, who have been shoved in the corner because of personality and who likes who. But the persons have been trained with the ministry's money, with our taxpayers' money, but they've been pushed to the side. I can recall several years back, I would have visited Cat Island. I went to Albight High School. They had 13 brand new computers in boxes. Why are these here? Because we don't have the electrical outlets in order to facilitate the connection of the computers. Power. You go to schools now, and I can call the names of the schools. They have 40 computers, 20, 30 computers sitting in a computer lab that's closed because you do not have sufficient electricity or power or amps or voltage or whatever you need. Mr. Sands needs to stop making excuses. He is the leader of the Department of Education, and he has a remit also. So guess what? If you have a remit for the Department of Education, the organization and the day-to-day running of the Department of Education, and the Ministry of Finance has to remit for the technical services and works, listen, there's something called collaboration. There's something called communication. There's something called writing to the minister and saying, Minister of Education, listen, sir, if you want my ministry to function efficiently and effectively, these are the things I need.
Mr. Sands, very quickly, I'll let you respond, and we have to move forward. Go ahead. You wanted to respond very quickly.
All the president did was just amplify what I said. A lot of the things that we're required to do, they're impacted by what others are required to do.
So what are you doing
to
break through that barrier?
Hold it, Madam President. Every year, the Minister of Education, every minister, including this one, would have been given the challenges that we have, how we need to be able to deal with those challenges, what we need to do in terms of the funding for those challenges. You know as well as I know, in a budget that is given by the Ministry of Education to be considered in Parliament, there are restrictions on the budget. We cannot pay 1 cent for anything that was not approved in the budget. We don't approve the budget. And so if I need $10,000 to deal with the Cat Island issue, that has to be in the budget. You put it in the budget and the ministry would say to you, listen, because of the challenge we have now with funding, we cannot approve that. And so
Mr. Sands,
in
10 years you cannot get one approval?
Belinda, hold on one second. I realize that this is a very heated discussion, but I do want to leave out our student. You're sitting here listening to all of this. You are watching this unfold. I know you have a specific question you want to put out there. But is there anything you want to add to that as a student now and getting a first-hand view of all of this?
I do. As being a part of the Teacher Cadet program, we had an initiative, the March Tutoring Initiative, where we were giving a student to work with in the subjects of mathematics or language. And what I realized was that most of the students who came to us, they were not comfortable with the simple pen, paper, board, marker, learning techniques. So what I had to do as a student myself, I had to go and research different apps that tailored mathematics or language. So my question is the Ministry of Education able to formulate an app that relates to the mathematics or the English language curriculum that that can be implemented in the schools for the students to use?
Yes. And the classic example of that is this government talked about the tablets that they're putting in preschools, which of course is a great idea. However, those tablets must be tied to the curriculum.
Exactly.
So that you now be able to effectively use that kind of information to advance whether it's English language, whether it's math. And so the technology that we use must also be tied into the curriculum. And so yes, we're doing that.
Has the Ministry of Education partnered with any other app developing companies to make this educational app into the tablets?
2 years ago, we partnered with a company in the Cayman Islands with respect to software for all of our schools in terms of the reporting aspect for all of the students. That, after 2 years, was canceled because the funding was prohibitive.
The funding was prohibitive.
Okay, well, we are way over time, but we got to take our break. Obviously, we've got a fantastic discussion. Doing a very good job. I think I found my replacement. We are at the halfway mark in our show tonight. We are discussing education, new beginnings. We're back on the record right after this.
This segment is sponsored by Percy's Island Game.
Play with Island Games. We making dreams come true. Play with Island Games. We paying more out to you. Don't mind the noise in the market. You getting cash in your pocket. 'Cause Island Games is spicy and spicy is tradition. So when you play we putting Bahamians first. Guaranteed to pay. Island Games. We like them other jokers. We've been here from the start. From the bike to computer. Island Games, we can make your dreams come true. We playing with Island Games.
Yep. I got you. I really appreciate you helping us out. No problem, buddy. Yeah, but thanks for helping us move.
Oh, I see you.
What happened, babe? What you mean?
Our news weekend has moved to 7:30.
I'm free to live my life, yeah. Free to be me, yeah. The way I wanna be. Doing the things that I wanna do. Yes, I'm living my life. Hey, BAF for life. Yes, I'm living my life. Hey, BAF for life. For life. Got you covered.
Welcome to the second half of tonight's show. Our topic, Education, New Beginnings. We continue our discussions with Lionel Sands, Belinda Wilson, and Duranique Minus. Duranique, you actually sort of opened a Pandora's box in the last segment, speaking to technology and the use of technology as a relevant learning tool. I mean, gone are the days almost of going to a chalkboard and writing and even textbooks to some extent. You started to tell us about a very interesting project you were working on during the break. I want you to share that with the public and sort of let's continue our discussion with that.
Okay, I partnered with OneMargin.ca, which is an app developing company. And Mr. Gilbert Kassar and I made a synopsis based upon the Ministry of Education curriculum on the subjects mathematics and English language. Now, because I have not been able to get the $15,000 to start the app project, I've not really been able to share with anybody. But I believe that if I was able to accumulate those funds to start it, that it will be very influential into the schools. Because the students, especially at the primary school level, majority of them have tablets and cell phones even at such a young age. So they are not interested in anything other than what they feel like they can apply themselves to, because majority of them are tech savvy. So if you implement that in their schooling system, then I believe it will benefit them much likely.
I'm taken aback by you, because you're thinking the way that we should be thinking when we talk about.
But Linda, she's a young mind.
When we talk about
therein lies the problem many times that we have.
When we talk about education on a national and a global level, you spoke about an app for mathematics. I can say to you, there are officers in the department in the Ministry of Education that I liaise with on a regular basis. They don't even use email. So if you're not using email at this point, how do you then create have the creativity to say, oh, we need an app for math or for science or language? The other thing is, we would have, well, I would say the ministry or department would have, over the last, let's say 6-7 years, there was a project with the Promethean board. Okay, what happened to them? I don't know. What happened to the Promethean boards, but millions of dollars.
Let's explain to people what the Promethean boards are so that they know.
Well, the Promethean board is an interactive board. So she spoke about the children writing on the paper. So the board will allow you to access the internet, and you will be able to make videos and the chat, Snap and WhatsApp and all of the various medium. You'll be able to use that board for, and that
within the classroom. That keeps the children excited and engaged. Yeah. Okay. However, there were some Promethean boards that were purchased or were given. We don't know the details, but where are they? Who are using them? I can say to you that I would have just come back from Maguana, because we went to look to assist our teachers in Maguana and Inagua for hurricane relief. There's a Promethean board in one of the schools, but it was never connected. So the only thing the teacher can do with it is use her LCD projector, and she uses it as a screen for the projector. So a board would cost about, I guess, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. What that could do for children in a Maguana environment.
But it's sitting there because no one completed the installation of it. And okay, several years ago, there were a group of teachers who were trained in STI. Now, this was supposed to be a training for teachers to produce the e-report cards. Okay. Or everyone was supposed to be trained. Well, let's say there are 4,000 teachers, so let's say 1,000 were trained. Okay, they dropped that. Then when we heard again, it was something called Power School. No one could explain that. Then when we heard again, it's a cash class flow project. So what I see happening in the Ministry of Education is there's a lot of ad hoc programs. I don't see leadership. I don't see a vision that says these are the goals that we set out to achieve over the next year, over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. And when the union would have agreed, and I brought the collective bargaining agreements, which is between the government of the Bahamas and the Bahamas Union of Teachers, when we try to police, when we try to monitor, when we try to follow up on that which has been agreed, which we know would help to improve education, we get a pushback and it becomes personal, and that needs to change.
I'd like you to respond to that, but even my colleagues are telling me of a situation where Cable Bahamas would have been providing free internet to some schools, in particular looking to assist with the I think the primary school, the preschool initiative with the tablets, etc. But all of that has even floundered because of some issues with the tablets coming, etc. But you listen to Belinda and others talk about these partnerships or these programs where institutions, groups want to help, but it doesn't seem that we're able to use a word, to get a sort of cohesive movement within the ministry to ensure that everybody benefits, or that it begins to spread to the wider school populace.
The intent of the SDI was to do just that.
Mm-hmm.
The SDI, until 2 years ago, was used primarily in primary schools. They were not used in high schools, and that's why we introduced.
And what was the SDI, so you could explain?
It's a software that provides the school and the teachers with the technology that they need in terms of the teaching learning process.
Okay.
Okay, and it gives you the reporting from such a software, so that you'd be able to go online and you could see how student X at Gerald Cash Primary School is doing, or teacher Y at Garventine's Primary School is doing. I could download that right from my own system and see how those teachers are doing. That was fine. And
they're doing already in the private school system, correct?
Yeah, but we've been doing, SDI was around from before I went into the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
And 10 years ago, that is. The challenge we had with SDI was that the platform for SDI was not in the Bahamas. It was elsewhere, outside of the Bahamas. And whenever the teachers and the administrators really needed access to it, you have to get access from overseas. And so what we wanted to do, we wanted to have a platform that was resident here. And that is what the power school
logically makes sense,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because the support that we needed needed to be here when we needed them.
So why couldn't it happen?
Particularly around, because they didn't want to give up the platform. It was a foreign company. So we went to Power School, which was operated primarily by some folks here who actually had dealings with somebody else in California, which was basically.
So, Mr. Sant, I understand what you're saying. That obviously they didn't want to acquiesce to what you wanted, and it seemed to make sense. But why not? Why are we not at the stage in our development where our own people are developing the things?
I'm coming to that.
I'm
coming to that.
I mean, I'm sure there are many programmers out there who can do these kinds of things.
Mr. Sawyer, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
See, all of that you're talking about is in the past. We've established our own technology division in the Ministry of Education, and it's being headed by someone who went away to school. In fact, Mr. Byron Small, I'll call his name, who's the vice principal, who actually was responsible for much of the technology that we use in terms of reporting what the students may have done or what the teachers are doing, and he was responsible for actually building that himself, because he went away to school for that. So he is now responsible for our technology advancement in the schools. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we're doing that simply because every other person we've engaged in the past was overseas, and that has its own challenges. And so Mr. Small is working for us. He's being paid by the Ministry of Education.
To complete this. So, if we have this discussion a year from now,
it should be different. In fact, it would be different at the end of the school year. You would see the difference.
Belinda, you seem to think differently.
I have a lot of confidence in Byron Small, and I'm glad that he's heading the unit, because my understanding is someone else who does not have the competence that he has is going to be heading the unit. So Byron Small heading the unit gets a thumbs up from me. However, you asked, why don't we have someone who is in the Bahamas that is heading these initiatives? Because every minister of education who goes to a conference, a workshop, or a minister's meeting, or even visit on a study visit, they come back with the ideas that they would have picked up from abroad. I've been to Finland, the ministers have been there, we've been to Canada to look at what it is that they're doing. However, they come back and they try to implement the same thing wholesale, and it is not modified to meet our needs. And I go back again to Mr. Director. Mr. Director is your technical officer who is in charge on a day-to-day basis. So when the minister comes, he, she, or whomever, because they come and go, they should be told, written to, and it should be stressed. So, madam, this is where we're going. This is what we need.
We're going to the break. Mr. Sands, is that practical in a political environment? A minister comes in?
No,
it isn't? Okay. We are
Why
at the
isn't
point,
it?
We are at the point
Please
of our
do.
break. We're going to pick up that discussion on the other side of this break. You're watching On the Record. Stay with us.
What do you believe?
Do you believe in energy? Do you believe in dreams?
Do you believe in passion?
Do you believe in family?
Do you believe in caring?
Do you believe in freedom?
Do you believe in imagination?
Do you believe in love?
Do you believe in community?
Do you believe in discovering?
Do you believe in music?
Do you believe in yourself?
Do you believe in living?
Believe in best.
Play with Island Games. We making dreams come true. Play with Island Games. We paying more out to you. Don't mind the noise in the market. You getting cash in your pocket. 'Cause Island Games is spicy and spicy is tradition. So when you play, we putting Bahamians first. Guaranteed to pay. We like them other jokers. We've been here from the start. From the bike to computer. Island Games. We can make your dreams come true. We playing with Island Games.
Since our first episode, On the Record has had a profound effect on audiences, each week we push the boundaries of political debate, exploring the challenges of governance, the excitement of opposition politics, all against the backdrop of a majority young and oftentimes impatient electorate.
You are the expert here, yet you've done nothing. You appear to have no plan.
And from the time man has been on this world, men have been making mistakes.
God realized that. That's why he make hell.
Well, wait a minute, sir.
This is a benefit of being an independent juror. I don't have to sit there and squabble about who did what over the past 40, however many years.
We touch on the controversial, contentious, and current. Our goal, to leave audiences more informed to make better decisions. Be sure and join us each Thursday at 8 p.m., cable channel 212. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We hope to see you then. Welcome back. This is our final segment of this episode. It's been quite an exciting show. We've come to that final segment and it doesn't seem like we've had nearly enough time. But as we went into the break, we were talking really about the realities of what you face and the realities of the ministry. I mean, as you would have said, Belinda, ministers come and go, governments change, and in the past, for 20 years, it's been a 5-year cycle. The realities of having a new minister and even a new government whose priorities change.
And that is the challenge that we face, simply because a government comes in with a mandate. And of course, within their manifesto, they determine these are some of the things that we would wish to accomplish during that 5-year period. And so what it means is if those mandates are not akin to or similar to the mandates of the previous government, then it means that as a technical officer, chief technical officer in the Ministry of Education, I have to stop and shift. Because my job is only to give advice. It's not to make the minister to take the advice.
You don't run the shop.
No. And so the point I'm making is, and certainly I would be able to say to a minister, and I've had the privilege of serving 4 ministers in the last 10 years. I'd be able to say,
should get a special award just for that. Go ahead.
I may be able to say to the minister, listen, this is where we were prior to you coming here. And based on what I'm seeing, this is leading to somewhere that we would inure to the benefit of the Bahamian education system. But that minister may have been given a mandate that was totally different from the direction that we were in. And so convincing a minister to continue with something that was not really personal to him or his government is a challenge.
Can be a challenge. Belinda, I'll give you a minute to respond.
I want to disagree with the director straight up. Because whether the minister changes or the government changes, the mission of education does not change. And the mission of education is to ensure that our 57,000 students have access to education. They have equal access and they are equipped.
So maybe.
And they and they're knowledgeable and you're able to, so it does not matter who sits in the chair. The minister is a policy maker. The director and his team, they're the experts. And let me tell you something. If you are confirmed in your post, you've been appointed by the Public Service Commission under the seal of the Governor General, you are confirmed in your post, you are the expert in education, you are confident in what you need to do, you have the policies to back you up, and the Education Act and that statute law, I don't care who minister, this is what falls under my portfolio, sir. And this is the direction where we're going to go. Now, if your government has another idea or program, fine. But the mission and the vision of education never changes.
Well, it sounds like we need to do another show on the public service and the realities of the public service, because I hear where you're coming from and I hear where you're coming from, but my own personal experience is that, the realities in government are very different from times on what is stated in the policy or what is backing you up. But that's a whole other show. Jurnik, I know that you wanted to move in another direction, and we're going to move towards that now. And this has to do really with national exam results and where we are with that, because as you would have just stated, Belinda, in the policy, making sure that our children are knowledgeable, and that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm going to turn it over to you now. I know you've got a question specifically.
Okay. Everybody is so concerned about the national average for the BJC and BGCSE, which is at a D level. My biggest concern personally is that is the BJC and BGCSE exams really centered to show the intelligence of the students? Because from personal experience, I took the religious BJC exam, and because of misreading information, I ended up leaving out half of the section, but I still got a B grade. So do you think that's the case in most situations where the children just cannot conform to that type of examination centers? Like, are they not comfortable with being able to just sit down and have all that information to be placed in that exam, the BJC and BGCSEs?
What most students need to understand, what all students need to understand, is the examination result only depicts where the student was at that particular point in time of the exam itself. It does not say this is the sum total of your intelligence.
It doesn't say that you're a D student.
Right.
No. It
says that this is where you were on that date and that hour when you sat that exam.
Yes.
And so that's the reason why we should not put too much, put all of our credibility on the exam results alone.
But for them to enter into the University of the Bahamas.
I understand. I'm going to get there. And so the challenge we have is, how do we make it so possible for the students to be able to demonstrate completely what it is that they're able to do, because the exam speaks to students being able to do something that's different from when they first started the process.
Yes.
And what we've done over the last couple of years is we've determined that how much time we have?
Not a lot.
Okay, we've determined that schools should not be used to build themselves up so that students would come in and in a box and then respond. Students ought to be the focus and not schools. Let me get you to understand that. We have 987 students in government high school right here in New Providence. All of them, regardless of their aptitude, their career interests, or their inclination, all of them are placed in this one school that we call a performing arts school. And whether you're a performing arts student or not, this is where you are. And so what happens with a child who does not want to do performing arts?
Right.
Okay.
So they are now already at a disadvantage.
And so what we've done over the years is we're changing schools and adapting schools to the interests of students, so that when you get in your interest in the exam room, it's easy for you to succeed because this is your interest, this is your opportunity, your interest.
Whatever it is that they're doing, it has to be in isolation from the union, because I'm not aware of what the director just said. But I want to go back to what she said, because I thought that the director would have debunked this misnomer that there's a national D average. There's no such thing.
There is no such thing as a D
There's
average.
no such
That's why I
thing.
didn't even answer it.
You know, but this is an opportunity to clear it. Okay, and students are graded on a 7-point grading scale. So if you have the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it states what the students should know, what their ability level is at each subject area or discipline area. When you talk about changing schools, because government high is supposed to be the performing arts school, and when you talk about, we're looking at how it is we're going to direct children in other areas, then has the curriculum been addressed? Has that been revised?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is my
Because you can't do it in isolation.
It is my personal experience that a lot of high school graduates on the surface are functionally illiterate. They have a difficulty expressing themselves. They have a difficulty writing. You have instances they come for a job and they will take the application and let somebody else fill it out to bring it back home. And I'm not even talking about written correspondence, but you look at the level of preparedness of students and it is scary, it is frightening.
And here's why, and that's the reason why I talked about preparing students for school, not school for students. Here's why. If a child who is inclined to pursue, for example, auto mechanics after he finishes school,
right,
why should that child be taught college level math in high school or college level English in high school? And that's what we're talking about, the change now. That child needs what kind of math? Workplace math.
Right.
And workplace English.
Fine.
That's what we're looking at.
I agree with that, because I would like to have that young man or young woman who gets into auto mechanic to be able to write out a receipt for me,
but
or
not
write out an
not
invoice.
give him college level math, because he will fail.
But the only way that can happen is if the curriculum is revised, and that is what we've been calling for in our agreement from 2005. There's supposed to be a curriculum development committee with the ministry and the union. Mr. Sands, please tell me, when did we ever meet? We submitted our names. Nothing. Everything you try, there's a pushback as if, you're trying to run the ministry. No. We have seen where there are some loopholes, and we see where there can be a partnership between the union and the ministry for the betterment of our students. And let me tell you another thing too. The focus is on teachers who came 1 minute late. It's not student-centered. You're ACR, I will grade you. No, let's focus on the students. Let's put the strength in there for the English. Let's put the strength in there for literacy. If they're unable to move to that level, then let's give them the support that they need. But no, we're too busy watching to see who's leaving the campus and who came 1 minute late.
It would seem to me that, as is always the case, there seems to be there seems to be a need for more collaboration between these two entities. As this is about education and it is primarily focused on our young people, I'm going to ask Veronique to have the last word on the show tonight. From your perspective, where you sit, where would you like to see education in the Bahamas? What would you like to see happen 5 years from now when you're out of school and done and into your career? What would you like to be able to see the Bahamas' education system look like in 5 years?
I would like to see the education system tailored to the student's perspective, meaning that not one particular school will have this for auto mechanics or this for mathematics, but in the school system, when a student is entered into the school system, you recognize what their abilities are with whatever means you have, and you tailor their educational towards that, towards what they decide and what they're aspiring to become. I believe in that sense it benefits the whole country, the whole system. So that's how I feel
Words of
about
wisdom.
that.
Thank you very much, folks. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We could have talked for a whole other hour. But you know, as I said at the beginning, of the show, it is always the right time to talk about education. And so I hope that you will come on again, and we will continue our discussion and get a little deeper into some more things. We're off to the start of the new year, and certainly there are going to be a lot of challenges that you'll be facing in this year. But certainly we'll be here to monitor and bring you back on to discuss. Veronique, I would like to personally thank you for being here today and doing such a great job. I don't know what your career choice is after this.
Teaching.
Teaching. Oh, excellent. There you go. All right. Well, folks, we hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to Lionel Sands, Belinda Wilson, Veronique Minus, my producer, technical staff, and of course you, the audience, for watching week after week. Thank you so much for keeping On the Record just where it is every Thursday night. Once again, I'm Jerome Sawyer, your host. We'll see you next time.